Ruth Edwards.
Thank you, Chair. Home Secretary, I'd like to turn to the issue of policing, if I may. We've heard a lot of conflicting opinions about stop and search. I was wondering what your experience was of engaging with communities around the issue of stop and search, particularly with black and minority ethnic communities.
Well, if I may, I think as someone that spends nearly every single day in this role with representatives from the police, I do want to pay tribute to the police in terms of their conduct and how they have responded, particularly to the deeply challenging times through coronavirus, but also pay tribute to the way in which they have been engaging communities through what has been quite a challenging particular period of time. But specifically to your question around my experience of this issue of stop and search, I have met with victims of knife crime and serious violence many times. And I've had the experience of not just seeing but hearing from those victims. More often they are mothers and fathers, of the devastating impact that knife crime, violent crime has had on their children. More often than not, that's resulted in the loss of their child. So stop and search, in my view, is a vital tool to protect and prevent further victims of such crime. And I have heard repeatedly from many victims, from parents in particular, from predominantly Afro-Caribbean communities, and very much, I have to say this, across the country. I've heard it more in London, where I've spent more time due to restrictions, obviously, prior to COVID, speaking to individuals who've always said, they've repeatedly said to me, stop and search is working. It could have saved the lives of their child, basically, and more needs to be done to reduce violent crime and get deadly weapons off our streets.
Thank you. It sounds to me like the police are caught a bit between a rock and a hard place. On one hand, they are accused of over-policing communities, and on the other hand, they're told that they don't do enough to stop knife crime and serious violence. So how do you think they can strike the right balance, one that both has the confidence of communities, all communities in the UK, including black and minority ethnic communities, but also tackles serious violence?
Well, I think first of all, we have to remember and reflect upon the model of policing that we have in our country. First and foremost, we have policing by consent. That defines the nature of policing. That is a Pelian principle that has been established for over 200 years. And effectively, the police are part of the communities that they police. They work with community groups and organisations every day. I have heard of remarkable, a range of really quite frankly, uplifting stories and reports from chief constables and police officers, even throughout coronavirus, of community engagement, proactive engagement as well. The public do want to see police officers actively in their community. But specifically with regards to stop and search, towards the end of last year, we asked the College of Policing to update its guidance when it came to stop and search, to make sure the guidance provided very much, the best practice around community engagement, the right guidance around proportionality, the right guidance around safeguards. That's absolutely right. And that is effectively how the police. They exercise their judgment, they're trained in that way. And the police have my full backing when it comes to the fair and proportionate use of stop and search to tackle serious violence. We've seen a lot of that in terms of, we've seen some horrible scenes around the country, quite frankly, devastating scenes, violent activity where the police themselves have been subject to the most abhorrent and appalling assaults. And of course, the police have to exercise their judgment in every situation. When it came to the protesters we saw, the police were exercising their judgment based on operational command that was given to them at the time.
Thank you. You mentioned assaults on police officers, and I think we've all been shocked to see the pictures of quite serious injuries caused to police officers who've been policing protests here in London. I know that the government's currently consulting on doubling prison sentences for people who assault any emergency services workers. Do you think this will be enough to help to protect our police officers, but also other emergency services workers? Will it be enough to deter them? And is there anything else we can do apart from increasing sentencing time?
Well, thank you for the question. I think this is really important. We cannot underestimate, and we've seen the pictures on our screens and all the rest of it. We cannot underestimate the level of violence and the assaults that have taken place on our police officers. Last year alone, there was something like 30,000 assaults on our officers. That, to me, is what I would define as senseless violence being levelled at our brave officers, and it is worse than alarming, quite frankly. The consultation is important, and that is why I urge everyone, everyone to participate and engage in it. And the consultation is based on doubling the maximum sentence emergency worker. We want this to be a deterrent. It's right that this should be a deterrent. And if you look through some of the figures that the NPCC have published throughout COVID, they themselves are publishing figures on assaults, but also prosecutions. The CPS themselves stepped up throughout this particular period to tackle the perpetrators of assaults. I do think, quite frankly, that this is an important measure in terms of doubling the maximum sentence. We need a deterrent in the system, and it's there to make, hopefully, people think twice. But at the same time, I think there's much more that is required in general and genuine respect of people that serve our community, that are there on the front line to protect us all from danger and harm. And that's whether you're a police officer, an ambulance worker, or a fire worker, anyone in uniform service. The lack of respect that is shown to them day in, day out for the incredible work that they do, I think is simply not acceptable. And I hope this consultation will go some way to rebalance